So this morning, Greece activates the European Union IMF bailout, $56 billion U.S. equivalent. And, of course, once you get the IMF into the act, you're talking about bone-crushing, deadly austerity. Don't listen to all the garbage in the media about how Greeks live high on the hog and how they're enjoying these wonderful lifestyles. This is all baloney. This is a relatively impoverished Mediterranean country. Don't kid yourself. And if they've got some solace from vacations or long afternoons, look at the actual conversion tables and you'll see what they live on, and it's not pretty. And also, don't listen to this garbage. The entire U.S. media line is to somehow play Greece against Germany. And you can see the hedge fund line is to break up the European Union, to destroy the euro. And whatever you think about the euro, the chaotic collapse of the euro is in nobody's interest. It represents a huge degradation of the world financial system and a victory for the hedge funds. What you've got to do, of course, again and again in this world is figure out what the finance oligarchs are doing. Figure out what the Wall Street financiers and the City of London financiers, what are they doing, and get yourself on the other side. Fight back. And if you're not fighting bankers in some form, you're absolutely wasting your time, because the main focus of evil in the modern world is finance capital. Not industrial capital, but finance capital. If we can only mobilize some industrial capital to fight back against finance capital, we'd be a whole lot better off. So the word now is we have Dominique Strauss-Kahn, the former French finance minister, a monetarist jackal in his own right. Dominique Strauss-Kahn says that the International Monetary Fund will move quickly on the request from Greece. We are prepared to move expeditiously on this request, yes, to impose another round of deadly austerity. They already had one or two rounds of absolutely draconian cuts, and now we're going to see burning time come to Greece, ungovernability, right? The Greeks, fortunately for them, have got some unions in the public and private sector that will fight back against this. We don't have that in the United States. We have Tea Party fanatics who run around saying, we want more austerity. Please carve more out of our flesh. The elementary class consciousness of the average Greek is better, certainly, than the elementary class consciousness of the people here in the U.S. Remember, class consciousness means Plato, and it means that there's an oligarchy, and if you're not part of it, you better fight it. You've got to check it and balance it somehow and make sure that this doesn't become the overriding principle in society. The other thing to watch in this crisis is the German Wolfgang Schäuble is dirty. He is a sinister figure. He has stressed that a group of experts from the European Central Bank and the International Monetary Fund would need to confirm whether Greece really needs the aid. Well, this entire method of bailouts, of course, is a disaster. It's a failure. It won't work. It doesn't solve anything. The Greeks would need to think, if they had their own currency, they would need to think about capital controls and exchange controls, and they would need to think about very concrete measures against the hedge funds. Let's just remind everybody who the hedge funds are. Basically, it's the same group of predatory hedge funds which attacked Lehman Brothers and drove it into bankruptcy. Now, you might say, well, Lehman Brothers bankrupt, fine, but the particular chaotic way in which this happened was due to the fact that once the bubble began to come down, the hedge funds began to try to essentially make their own profits out of the collapsing bubble. And in that context, we have to mention Paulson and Company, the hedge fund which is now in the middle of this dirty case of Goldman Sachs designing a CDO, a collateralized debt obligation, designed to fail, designed to go bankrupt, and then selling that to some suckers from Germany and other places around the world. Yeah, that's John Paulson and Company. And John Paulson is one of the people leading the attack on Greece. As soon as, of course, you say Lehman Brothers and their bankruptcy, you've got to mention David Einhorn of Greenlight Capital, that other predatory hedge fund. And he took the public role of pointing out all of the inconsistencies in Lehman Brothers accounting and so forth, not as a disinterested public service, but so that he could make billions out of it. So we've got the predators from Paulson and Company. We've got the predators from David Einhorn's Greenlight Capital. We've got Donald Morgan from Brigade Capital. He was part of the idea dinner at Moness, Crespi, and Hart there on February 8th. We've got SAC Capital Advisors, also part of the attack on Lehman Brothers. We've got, above all, Soros Fund Management, because the ideologue, the flagship of this group of hedge funds, Soros Fund Management, don't forget his friend Stanley Druckenmiller, and we've got, of course, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Barclays Bank. Barclays, of course, played a key role in bringing down Lehman Brothers. So once the bubble begins to collapse, the bubble is objectively there. It's not the idea that this is all a conspiracy from beginning to end. It has objective features that set the stage and which are indispensable. Without that, the hedge funds could not act. But once you've got a bubble, and once the bubble has peaked, then, of course, the hedge funds move in and attempt to precipitate the collapse of the bubble in such a way that they make money out of it, and that's what's happening vis-a-vis Greece. So the question is, what could the U.S. do to relieve some pressure on Greece and Europe, and therefore the world? It would be to act against these hedge funds. In other words, it would be nice to see a blizzard of law cases, not just Goldman Sachs, but the hedge funds, because the hedge funds play an indispensable role since they are totally deregulated. It is time to regulate hedge funds. The causes of the current economic depression are basically two in terms of the factors precipitating the financial panic. One is derivatives, the buildup of the derivatives bubble of 1.5 quadrillion up to the middle of 2008, and it's still more or less there. And then the hedge funds, who also play this critical role that we've seen. So measures to attack derivatives, we'll get to that later in the program. Measures to attack hedge funds, to regulate them, to investigate them, to, frankly, to harass them, because that's what a government ought to do. These are predatory, antisocial institutions, and they've got to be brought to heel. They're attacking Greece, and any discussion of Greece, as we see, for example, various commentators trying to sound radical, talking about what should be done with Greece. If you don't talk about bridling the hedge funds, getting the hedge funds on a short leash, and essentially wiping them out, regulating them, then they're not hedge funds anymore. You're not getting anywhere near the heart of the matter. We'll be back in a minute.